Welcome to Too Late Who Gives a Shit, a new show in which I talk about an old game that's already been covered by dozens of channels, making this video a complete waste of everyone's fucking time. Lisa the Painful RPG is an indie game on Steam that's developed a cult following in the past few years, and for good reason. It's one of the most memorable video games I've ever played, and if you're already familiar with it, this video will mostly be preaching to the choir. The simplest way of describing it is that it's like The Last of Us took place within Earthbound. It has the goofy style of Itoi's classic RPG, but with a bleak, post-apocalyptic setting that will make you feel bad about humanity. The premise is that all women disappeared in a flash of light, and with only men left behind, civilization immediately dissolves into chaos, barbarism, and perversion. The only relief from the hell the world has become is a drug called joy, which causes horrific mutations when taken in large doses. You take control of Brad, a joy addict who finds a baby girl mysteriously left out in the open. Knowing the danger she would be in if the rest of the world found out about her, Brad raises her in secret while struggling against his drug addiction. Eventually, word gets out and Brad has to go to war against the entire world to save his daughter. This is only scratching the surface of how dark the game gets, but what's remarkable is how relentlessly funny it is, often at the exact moments that it's horrifying. It's rare to see two diametrically opposed tones working together so well like this, and it's hard to begin explaining why it's so funny without spoiling really great jokes. A lot of the humor comes from the endless supply of great characters. There's Terry, the game's Navi-like helper who has no idea how to fight and uselessly flings his body at the enemy. Chris Colombo, the deer-riding badass who bullies you throughout the game. And my personal favorite, the Soup. The game also takes a lot of delight in just being a flat-out asshole to you, but in a way that makes you feel like you're in on the joke the game is making at your expense. The humor is a very important part of the game, because without that levity, this would be a very grim experience. It's called the Painful RPG for a reason. The game is constantly ambushing you, stripping you of supplies, and pulling the rug out from under you every time you begin to feel secure. You can't even rest your party without the risk of a member being kidnapped or some other awful thing happening to you. The game occasionally forces you to choose whether you want terrible harm to befall Brad or a member of your party. If you harm yourself, you'll permanently lower your stats and fighting ability for the rest of the game. Sacrificing a teammate instead decreases loyalty and leads to members abandoning your party. It also raises a question of whether you feel guilt over the things you do to fictional characters. The game frequently makes you question right and wrong in ways that are surprisingly deep for a game that's so silly on the surface. It also has a way of involving you in the story by never directly spelling things out and instead leaving fragments of lore all over the world, often in hard-to-find places, for you to piece together. The story also bleeds into the gameplay with things like Brad's joy addiction, which is an actual battle mechanic. If the player doesn't use joy, Brad will go through withdrawal and lose most of his fighting ability. Using joy not only restores Brad's normal state, but temporarily powers him up to deal massive damage. Your decision-making can change how dependent Brad is on joy throughout the game, and while it's overall best to avoid using the drug at all, fighting will be much harder that way. This is another example of the game testing your commitment to doing the right thing. Every option has bad results, but the morally wrong one is always slightly easier. It's up to you to decide how much you're willing to sacrifice in order to keep doing the right thing without any kind of reward in a fictional cartoon world. If all of this seems intimidating, it's not really as hard as it sounds. While the game can be challenging, it usually doesn't require grinding for XP, and instead your failures can usually be overcome by changing party members or attack strategies. The game provides a huge number of recruitable characters that can be combined in ways that yield dramatically different results. Birdie the Drunk isn't very useful on his own, but when paired with a character that can do fire attacks, his alcohol spit can lead to incredible damage. Finding a team with synergy is really rewarding, and battles that seem unwinnable can become a breeze with as little as one character swap. Another thing about the game, which you may have noticed by now, is that its soundtrack is incredible. At times it's stupid to the point of being brilliant. Other times it's psychotic and dissonant, or gentle and introspective, but it's always perfectly suited to what's going on. Like the game itself, it spans an impossible range of tones and does all of them well. If you've watched my videos up until this point, then you'll know that I nitpick soundtracks often, because I consider music to be an important part of a game. It's disappointing that modern games seem to be moving away from soundtracks in pursuit of realism, but this is a game that puts its soundtrack front and center, and it's so much richer for it. The visuals also deserve some praise. The game is extremely crude compared to something like Cuphead or Hollow Knight, but I wouldn't have it any other way. The deliberate crappiness of the visuals is a huge part of the game's character, and the simplistic sprites soften the impact of the violence and gore in a way that allows the game's humor to land. It probably wouldn't be funny to see a group of children burned in a game that didn't look this shitty. There's something odd and surreal about seeing nightmarish sights through this cartoon lens, and the sprites manage to be extremely expressive in spite of their pixel limitations. This is a game that knows exactly what it is and what it wants to do, and it works beautifully within its limitations. If I had to criticize something about the game, it would be the way its world is laid out. Most 16-bit RPGs used a top-down perspective that gave the illusion of a 3D world. Lisa instead uses a side-scrolling view and breaks its world up into sections that vaguely resemble Mario levels. It even has something approaching platforming at times, and it's a refreshing change of pace from the RPGs that inspired it. The problem is that the game connects these areas with caves, which introduces the idea that the world has depth and isn't one flat plane. If the game had a map, which it doesn't, it would look a lot more like Metroid Prime than Super Metroid. It's not easy to keep track of which door leads where, and even at the end of the game, I still have to find my way around through trial and error, mistakenly entering areas until I find the one I'm looking for. This isn't a major knock against the game, just something that could have been handled better. Making the doors more distinct with markings or signs would have helped a lot. The only other problem isn't related to the game itself, but rather Windows 10. The October update, the same one that deleted a lot of people's user folders, has broken the normal version of the game. You can still play the legacy version, but it doesn't offer any visual options and controller support is harder to set up. It's still fully playable, but it may be confusing to start if you're not prepared. The developer is working on a fix, but this won't be an issue at all if you're on an older version of Windows or if you have Linux or Mac. The game currently runs $10 and I think it's well worth that price. If you want to see everything the game has to offer, then you can easily expect over 10 hours of gameplay on your first run. There's also a DLC expansion that offers a small sequel with equal quality to the main game. If any of this has sounded interesting to you, then I implore you to check it out. The game frequently goes on sale for half price, so add it to your wishlist if you're on the fence. This is one of those games I find myself remembering and laughing at out of nowhere, and to get that kind of experience for only a couple of bucks is a no-brainer. I'd give Lisa
17.
Yeah, well, alright.
256.
You can't just change it like that, I already rendered the tingles.
9,400.
You know what? You're an asshole. Yeah, fall into the earth. Dumb guy.